So imagine this. You're 11 years old, and you're about to walk into Disneyland for the very first time. And you've been waiting for this moment for what feels like forever. You've watched all the movies, memorized the songs, and you've dreamed about being in this place. And now, finally, you are. You step through the gates, and it's like stepping into another world. The first thing that hits you is the music. Familiar Disney melodies drifting through the air. Then the smells, popcorn, and something sweet. Maybe it's cookies, maybe it's chocolate, but it feels familiar and comforting. There's this buzz of excitement in the air. People are laughing, kids are tugging at their parents' hands, pointing at everything, eyes wide with wonder. And then you see it, the castle. It's shimmering in the sunlight like something out of a dream. And for a moment, you just stand there, taking it all in. The colors, the sounds, that overwhelming feeling of being there. You can't believe that that place is real. And that feeling, that moment, it isn't an accident. It's carefully designed. Every little detail, from the layout of the park to the way the music surrounds you, it's crafted to create exactly that reaction. Everything around you is designed to pull you into the story. And today we're going to be talking about how they do it and what we can learn from Disney. So, hi everyone. My name is Melinda Seckington, and I run my own company, Learn, Build, Share, where I help engineering teams with their communication and management skills. So I used to be an engineer and an engineering manager at companies like FutureLearn and the Wikimedia Foundation, and now I get to help teams basically improve the skills and processes that I wish someone had helped me with when I was in those roles. So I was very much a Disney kid growing up. I loved watching all the movies and TV shows, and I'd been dreaming for years about going to one of their parks. And I remember when I finally got to go to Disneyland Paris for the first time. Being there was a dream come true for me, and my experience at Disney was magical. And the Disney magic never left me. I still love watching all the Disney movies, even though I have opinions about the newest ones. If there's a karaoke night, chances are I'll be singing some Disney songs. You might be able to convince me later to do that. And even some of my jewelry and makeup are Disney-inspired. And I've been lucky enough to visit 4 of the 6 Disney resorts. I've still got 2 on my to-do list, and one day I'll get to them. But Disney has been always part of my world. And it shaped how I think about experiences. I love theme parks, theater, escape rooms, video games, and I've always been fascinated by how great experiences are designed. And that curiosity is at the heart of what I do nowadays as an engineering manager, as an event organizer, and even as a speaker. It's all about creating great experiences, whether that's for customers, for teams, or conference attendees. It's about putting them at the heart of the experience. And that's what we're going to look at today, because Disney isn't just about singing animals and princesses. It's about thoughtful design, attention to detail, and creating an environment where people feel something. And if you're leading a team, developing a product, or building a company culture, the same principles that make Disney magical can help us create better teams and better experiences for people. So, how does Disney do it? What happens behind the scenes of the magic? So, enter the Keys to the Kingdom tour. So this is a tour at Walt Disney World, which is the Orlando park in Florida. And I got to do that tour back in 2014, and that tour changed how I saw Disney. So for those who haven't heard of this tour, it's basically a behind-the-scenes tour that takes you beyond what the regular guests see. You get to walk through the underground tunnels where cast members move around. You hear about the stories of how the park was built. You learn about the hidden details in the rides. And most importantly, you hear about the 5 core values that guide every decision at Disney. The 5 keys. And these 5 keys are all about creating the experiences for the visitors coming to the parks. And they've got a long history. They've been around since the 60s, and Walt Disney himself had a hand in creating them. And they get used throughout the park, from how the park was designed to how the people working at Disney, which they call the cast members, interact with the guests. So every bit is thought out and designed. So today we're going to explore what Disney's 5 keys can teach us. So I'll focus specifically on how we can shape the experiences within our engineering teams, but these lessons apply to many types of environments. So creating a community, organizing a conference, building a product, it's all about delivering an intentional experience. So before we dive in, a quick disclaimer. I've never worked for Disney before, and I don't know to what extent these keys actually get used internally, especially with the current climate in the US and various initiatives being cut here and there. I'm basing this talk on the Keys of the Kingdom tour, books I've read, and observations I've made from visiting the parks myself. So we've got 5 keys: safety, courtesy, inclusion, efficiency, and show. Now, when we're looking at building experiences for teams, we could just say, oh, you know what? Let's just grab these keys, call them our values, and be done with it. But that doesn't get us that far. What we really want to understand is, how do we put these in practice? What do we need to do to create a great experience in our team? What questions do we need to ask ourselves? So for each of these, I'll be looking at ways Disney implements these keys with some real-life examples from the parks, and then I'll look at what lessons we can learn from them and show practical, hands-on examples of what you can do with your teams. So our first key is safety. Now, safety is Disney's top priority. If the park wasn't safe, the entire place would shut down. So the first thing to consider here is the safety of rides. Every ride is thoroughly tested, there are safety procedures, the staff are trained in what to do in emergencies. So rides like Big Thunder Mountain, Tron, and Space Mountain, they have automatic stop systems if a sensor detects an issue. Cast members practice evacuation drills to ensure things go smoothly during emergencies. So when it comes to rides, it's kind of obvious that safety comes first. But actually, throughout the park, there are tons of design details that come back to safety, details that you might not notice. So let's take a look at Main Street, USA. Now, this is the first themed land that you come across when you enter the Magic Kingdom in Disney World in Orlando. And each of the parks actually has a very similar and theme type entrance land. It's built to resemble the center of an American small town with a square and tons of little shops. So let's take a look at a couple of design details about safety. So our first detail, you might look at this and go, why are you highlighting a flagpole? What does that have to do with safety? Now remember, this park is in Central Florida. So it's located in what is known as Lightning Alley, an area that experiences an extremely high density of lightning strikes, about 20 per square kilometer per year, which, if I've done my math right, and could well be that I haven't, is, I think, 1 lightning strike a day. So that flagpole up there, that's actually a lightning rod. And within the parks, Disney has cleverly hidden these lightning rods without most people realizing what they actually are, making them part of the decor. So even that Mickey Mouse that you see in the left, its ear is made of copper and is a lightning rod. So safety against lightning is embedded everywhere. So let's take a look at another detail. So this is even more subtle. Whenever there's a step or a height change, Disney will always color it so that people have a small visual cue that they need to pay attention, making sure that people don't trip and stumble. Then there's a slant of the pavement. So for starters, the slant causes the rain to disperse, not leaving puddles and slippery spots. But also to stop kids from running into the park at full speed, making it just a little trickier to slow them down. And for rides, there are height markers before the queue. So you always know if you meet the height requirement. Disney makes safety obvious. It's never hidden or ambiguous. You know what the right thing to do is. So lesson 1, design for safety proactively, not reactively. So in our teams, safety isn't just physical, it's psychological. People need to feel safe to take risks, share ideas, and fail without fear. Psychological safety needs to be built in from the start, not added as an afterthought. So anticipate what might happen and plan for it. Be proactive in thinking about what could go wrong. So here are a couple of examples. So first, help create an environment where it's safe to ask anything. There are no stupid questions. Ever been in a meeting where someone hesitated to ask a question because they didn't want to feel embarrassed? In a strong team culture, we make it safe to ask anything. So what happens currently when someone asks a basic question in your team? Do you celebrate that curiosity, or does silence make people regret speaking up? And the way that you can change this is by being the person who, first ask those questions. Show that even the simplest questions are worth asking. Set the right example. And then if people ask those questions themselves, don't make light of them. Acknowledge them for what they are, curiosity. Then make it safe to talk about mistakes. If a deploy goes wrong or a project goes on longer than expected, do you focus on learning or finding someone to blame? Teams that grow are the ones that make it safe to talk about mistakes. So in practice, this can look like holding blameless retrospectives or changing the language you use when talking about mistakes. Make it about us versus you. So rather than an individual failing, the team fails together. And you reframe it as an opportunity to learn. Then make the right behaviors easy. So if you want people to do something, make it the easiest option. Make it so that good habits happen naturally. For instance, you can do things like using a linter or having a new starter checklist. Anything that just makes it easier for people to do the right thing. And then when there's an incident at Disney, cast members are trained to stay calm, follow protocol, and help guests. There's no panic, just a plan. So when things go wrong in our teams, do we create panic or do we support people? So do we have a process to follow that makes this easier? So psychological safety means knowing that if something breaks, we can fix it together. So here are 3 books about psychological safety that I would recommend if you want to read up more about it. There's 2 from Amy Edmondson, who basically coined the phrase psychological safety, The Fearless Organization and The Right Kind of Wrong. And there's Radical Candor. And each of these books have different good insights as to how to build psychological safety. So think about your own team. What can you do to help make your team environment safe? How do you make sure people feel safe to speak up, ask questions, and admit mistakes? And what guardrails exist to prevent problems before they happen? So what's one small change you could make to create a safer, more supportive environment? Next, let's take a look at courtesy. So at Disney, courtesy is more than just being nice. It's about making every interaction feel special. So cast members will greet every guest when you enter the park, when you get on a ride, when you order some food. They're there to set that tone for the entire park. Now, if you want to make it even more special, get a badge. So when I went to Walt Disney World 11 years ago, it was a few weeks after me and my now husband had gotten engaged. And we went with a huge group of friends. There were 12 of us in total. And one of our friends got us all these badges to wear. Now, me and my husband were the only ones who were wearing the just engaged one. It's not as if all 10 other people were also engaged. The others got badges like first time in the park, or it's my birthday, I've got something to celebrate. Everyone got a different badge. And initially I was like, this is a bit silly, I'm not going to wear it. But I soon realized that wearing it made you feel special. Everywhere we went, people would congratulate us, ask us how we got engaged, and we'd have all these amazing moments of interaction. You start having conversations with the cast members. So every Disney member will congratulate you and make you feel special. And a similar thing happens with the character cast members. So when talking to children, they all make sure to kneel down so that they're at eye level with the kids and just talking to them. It's a small gesture, but it makes a huge difference. It makes kids feel important. So lesson 2, make people feel valued. How you make people feel impacts how they show up at work. So people have different needs. Some want to feel seen and appreciated. Others want a sense of belonging or personal recognition. And there are a couple of useful ways to think about this. So first, there's the biceps model, created by Paloma Medina, which identifies six core human needs that are important to us to feel safe and secure. There's belonging. This is about feeling connected, feeling part of a group, a community. There's improvement. This is about growth, learning, and progress. There's choice, which is having control, autonomy, and flexibility. Equality, which is making sure that things are fair and equitable. Predictability, knowing what to expect, and status, knowing how you fit in, what your purpose is. And it will vary per person whether one of these core needs is affected in a specific situation. We each find different core needs important at different times in different contexts. Then there's the concept of love languages, which is about how people prefer to receive appreciation and recognition. So while originally this started as a thing about personal relationships, the concept applies at work too. So some people feel valued through receiving gifts, others through words of affirmation, acts of service, quality time, or physical presence. The key is knowing how people on your team feel most appreciated. So both this and the biceps model helps us recognize that what works for one person won't necessarily work for another person. When we understand these differences, we can help people feel valued. So show appreciation in a way that fits for that person. So not everyone wants to be celebrated the same way. Some people love a shout out in a company-wide meeting. Others prefer a private message. Maybe for some it's a handwritten note, or maybe it's having a social hour in the team. Recognition isn't just about what you say, it's about how you make someone feel in that moment. And it doesn't always have to be about recognition. It can also be about shared experiences that bring people together. So give people ownership over traditions. Let them create something new that reflects the team's culture. Allow them to design their own rituals. A great example of this is how Pixar celebrates film launches. Every time they release a movie, every employee gets a unique custom-designed jacket that represents the film. GDS in the UK did this with custom stickers for projects. It creates a sense of shared achievement and belonging. So one event I organized, we got people to custom design their own t-shirts before the event. The shirts had personalized elements, and when people arrived, they immediately had this shared but also kind of unique experience. And most people changed into the shirts that day, and it started conversations. People were asking each other about their designs, finding common themes, and years later, some people still own those t-shirts. I still bump into people wearing those t-shirts. And so it wasn't just about the shirt. It was about the moment of feeling seen, included, and connected. So in a team setting, this could be as simple as designing team swag, or maybe something more personal, like a welcome package for new hires with a handwritten note from the entire team. Another example comes from a company I worked at that had a mug painting session. Now, this is when we were all in the office before the pandemic. But everyone got to design their own mug, and the office ended up filled with these colorful, unique mugs that reflected each person's personality. There were some mugs that were more popular than others, though. And the same company had a tradition of making and writing Christmas cards for colleagues. It was a small thing, but taking the time to write a handwritten message of appreciation really meant a lot for some people. So these kind of moments create connection, but they also tie into choice and belonging. People get to express themselves in a way that felt personal. So what can you do to make your team feel valued? Consider your team's daily interactions. What's one thing you can do to make a colleague feel valued? So next, let's look at inclusion. So inclusion means ensuring everyone can enjoy the experience. It's about recognizing different needs and removing barriers so people can fully participate. So Disney has the Disability Access Service, which is a way to offer alternative ways for guests with disabilities to enjoy the rides without missing out on the experience. So for some, this might mean joining the fast track queue so that they don't have to wait too long in line. For others, it might be providing wheelchair access. Some rides have custom-designed carriages or boats for wheelchairs. Inclusion means designing different paths to the same goal rather than forcing everyone into the same mold. Another example is in their maps. Visitors come from all over the world, so Disney provides maps in multiple languages. It's a simple but important way to make sure that all the guests, regardless of their native language, can navigate the park with ease. So lesson 3, assume everyone works in different ways. Just like people navigate theme parks differently, people navigate work differently. People do their best work when they can do that work in a way that works for them. Great teams embrace these differences rather than trying to standardize everything. So one book I really like that highlights an aspect is The Culture Map by Erin Meyer. She looks at how culture influences work styles, feedback, decision-making, and collaboration. For example, some cultures value direct, blunt feedback, while others use more subtle, indirect cues. And if you don't understand these differences, especially when you have an international team, it's easy to misinterpret someone's intent or dismiss their contribution. So another key aspect of inclusion is understanding personality differences. So Susan Cain's Quiet highlights how workplaces are often designed for extroverts and that introverts work differently. So culture and personality are just two aspects of how people work differently, but they're not the whole picture. When we talk about inclusion, we need to consider neurodiversity, race and ethnicity, gender and identity, disability and accessibility. To build an inclusive team, we need to understand individual needs and that everyone has equal opportunities to contribute. And what makes one person feel included might make someone else feel uncomfortable. It's not about enforcing the same experience for everyone. It's about creating space for people to show up as themselves and designing it intentionally in your team. So what are the things that we can do to help shape that experience, to make people be included? So recognize your own biases. We all have biases whether we realize it or not. They shape who we listen to, who we trust, and who gets opportunities. So who gets invited to key meetings? Who gets the most feedback? Who do you instinctively turn to for big projects? So the first step to inclusion is awareness. When you start noticing your own biases, you can start changing them. Then discuss preferred working styles. Now, not everyone works or communicates in the same way. And you can have those conversations without people necessarily having to disclose the underlying reason. You just need to assume that people will need different things in the first place. So some people love brainstorming out loud, others need quiet time to think first. Some prefer Slack messages, others do better with quick calls. So take the time to ask people what helps them work best and be willing to change and adapt. So one thing I'd like to do is the manual of me, or read me exercise, where in a session everyone writes down and discusses their working style with each other. Be careful with how you use these kind of manuals of me, though. I recommend these as a team exercise, as a way to have that discussion rather than it being an individual writing a manual and then expecting everyone around them to have read it. Then adapt team meetings. How can we design meetings that make space for everyone? Not everyone, again, engages in the same way, and some people might speak up easily, others might need to process before responding. So experiment to see what you could do in your team to make the meetings more inclusive. And small changes here can actually make a big difference. Then Disney provides multiple ways to experience the same attractions. Your team needs that same type of flexibility. So inclusion means recognizing that people have different life circumstances. Some are parents juggling school pickups. Others might work better outside the standard 9 to 5. So if you offer flexibility, whether that's in hours, remote work, or async communication, it helps people bring their best selves to work. So the best teams design flexibility into their culture. So ask yourself, what are the different ways of working in your team currently? Are you aware of your own biases in regards to those? So what's one step that you can make to make your team more welcoming and inclusive? Now, let's talk about efficiency. So Disney is great at keeping things running smoothly, whether it's ride operations, park navigation, or behind-the-scenes logistics. So we're going to start underground. If you've ever wondered why the parks are so clean, it's because trash cans are strategically placed every 30 steps, which is supposedly the number of steps that someone will take to find a trash can before giving up and just throwing it on the floor. Now, most of these trash cans are connected to a system of underground tunnels called the AVAC system, which sucks the waste through pipes under the park, basically keeping guest areas clean. And these tunnels, called the utilidors, they aren't just for trash. They also help with food deliveries, cast member movement, basically keeping things running without disrupting the experience above. And then there's the things that they've done to make the rides more efficient. There are continuous loading ride systems like the Omnimover in the Haunted Mansion. Instead of stopping and starting, these rides move constantly, reducing downtime and keeping the flow going. Then there are some rides like Test Track, which have single rider lines, which are to fill empty seats, making sure the rides actually go at capacity. And next to that, the queues are always moving. There's various things to see and do also during the queue. And the goal isn't just to make things faster. It's about creating the feeling of movement. People are more willing to wait longer if they're making progress. Then there's another clever efficiency trick, which is staggering the park opening. So Main Street, which you saw before, opens before the rest of the park, which means that guests can come into the park and it reduces congestion at the gates. The other lands all open at later times. But it feels like you're already in and doing something, even if the rides aren't open yet. So lesson 8, remove bottlenecks before they become problems. So the big takeaway here is removing friction before it causes frustration. When things flow smoothly, people don't even notice. But when there's a bottleneck, whether it's a slow process, unclear decisions, or a system that keeps breaking, that's when frustration will build up. So 2 books that really reinforce this idea are the Checklist Manifesto, which looks at how checklists can improve efficiency and reduce errors. And there's Thinking in Systems, which helps you identify patterns and small changes that you can take. And both show that efficiency isn't just about doing things faster, it's about making things smoother. So recognize where the pain points are. Efficiency starts by identifying the real problem. What's taking too long? What are we actually optimizing for? So for example, if engineers are spending half the time waiting for CI builds to finish, is it about making CI faster, or do we need to change how we work so people aren't blocked? And once you've identified the bottleneck, how do you help things move better? What do you need to do to streamline the flow? Take hiring, for example. If your hiring process takes 6 weeks, that's a long time for candidates to stay engaged. Can you remove unnecessary steps? Can you improve the scheduling? Can you bring it down to 2 weeks? Other areas to streamline include things like how to run meetings, how to handle approvals, how to give feedback. The more friction that we can remove, the better teams will perform. Then help reduce the cognitive load of regular tasks. So efficiency isn't just about speed, it's also about reducing the mental effort of repetitive tasks. For example, think about onboarding new hires. If someone has to ask 10 different people where to find things, that's wasted energy. A well-designed onboarding checklist and plan can help remove that pain. And the same goes for things like 360 reviews. Instead of asking vague, open-ended questions, you can refine them to be more specific and make it easier for people to give useful feedback. And finally, keep people in the loop. So one of Disney's best tricks is managing expectations and giving people that feeling of moving and progressing. And the same principle applies to communication. Keeping people updated creates the feeling that something is happening. People get more frustrated when they don't know what's happening than if they hear bad news. So it's about keeping people informed. And if there's a delay, acknowledge it. If you can't share information, say that you can't share information rather than saying silent. And this can be about anything from stakeholder updates to informing your team members about something to big team strategy changes. Transparency can make a huge difference in reducing frustration. So, what can you do to make your teams more efficient? Are there unnecessary steps, confusing processes, or avoidable bottlenecks? What's something that you could simplify or streamline to make things run smoother? And then finally, show. Everything Disney does is about creating this special experience. And nothing is left to chance. Every detail is intentional, designed to make you feel like you stepped into that other world. So, back to Main Street, USA. When you walk down the street, your eyes are drawn to the castle. It's big and shiny in the near distance, and Disney uses forced perspective to make the castle feel taller and more impressive than it actually is. And as the castle rises, its proportions get smaller, tricking your mind into believing it's much, much higher than it actually is. And throughout the park, there are tons of applications of forced perspective, but also other practical illusions and stage magic tricks. So the Haunted Mansion is one of the best examples. There are several spooky scenes, all using some combination of stage magic and technology. And my favorite is the ballroom scene, where these ghosts dance around, appearing and disappearing in midair. And it's done using a technique called Pepper's Ghost. And when Disney first built this ride, they invited a group of magicians to try it out. And most of them were stunned. They had no idea how this was done, because Disney had taken a well-known illusion, but used it in a way that no one had ever seen before. And I've had several moments like this in the park, just looking at something, and it's left me puzzled, where I'm going, how did they do that? How did they build this? And it isn't just about what you see. It's about what you hear and even what you smell. When you first enter the park, as I mentioned right at the start, you might notice the smell of popcorn. And it's there because people associate that smell with a sense of excitement and anticipation. Like, we feel like we associate that smell with watching a film or going to the circus. The scent is deliberately pumped into the air. And as you walk through different parts of the park, the smells change. So in one area, you might catch the scent of warm cookies. In the Haunted Mansion, the air smells dusty and old. In the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, the air smells like sea salt. And the same goes for sound. The background music subtly shifts as you move from one land to the other. There are certain rides like Flight of Passage, which is the Avatar ride, where you'll notice that the sound design really immerses you completely. You can hear distant creatures, the rush of wind, and it echoes. It creates a world that doesn't actually exist, but feels real. And most people would actively notice these details, but without them, the magic wouldn't feel the same. And that kind of attention to detail is everywhere. The pavement, the trash cans, the lighting, the costumes, everything is designed to fit seamlessly into the world around it. Every little thing contributes to making you feel like you're somewhere completely different. And then, at the end of the day, there's the fireworks. Disney gives you a moment to remember. The fireworks aren't just a spectacular display. They're the final note of the story. And no matter how exhausted you are from walking around all day, no matter how long you've waited in queues, you basically leave with a sense of wonder. That last moment is carefully designed to make sure you don't just remember the lines or the heat or the crowds, you remember the magic. So lesson 5 is make it magical. The best experiences aren't just good, they're memorable. And small touches can turn an experience from ordinary to extraordinary. So while courtesy was about how we interact with people, show is about designing moments that people won't forget. It's not about just treating people well. It's about shaping an environment that makes them feel something, whether that's excitement, wonder, or joy. And there's a book called The Power of Moments by Chip and Dan Heath, which explores why some moments stick and others don't. And the authors highlight 4 key elements that make a moment memorable. There's elevation. It's a moment that rises above the everyday. It stands out. There's insight. It shifts our understanding. Pride. It recognizes achievement. and connection. It's about deepening relationships. So if you want to create meaningful moments for our teams, we need to design experiences that include these elements. So here are a few examples. So sometimes it's the tiniest details that make a difference. The way you welcome someone on your team, the way you celebrate a team win, the way you treat someone when they need to take compassionate leave, the little moments that give people a sense of belonging and that they matter. So Disney makes magic by obsessing over the details that most people won't even notice. So in your team, what are the details that can make an interaction feel more thoughtful, more memorable? What small touches could turn those everyday moments into something that people remember? So then create unique team identities. Allow teams to shape their own identities and add their own personality to it. Because great teams have stories, traditions, rituals. These are the things that make people feel like they belong. At one company I worked at, teams brought their own personality into everything that they did. One team, everybody was a crew member, and a lot of their retros and sprint logos were all Star Trek themes. Another team that was responsible for implementing payment systems celebrated the end of each project by firing a money gun. Not my team, but if that's what you want to do it. These little traditions weren't just for fun. They reinforced a shared identity, making sure that people were connecting with each other. So what stories does your team tell? What traditions make them feel like they belong? So make big changes feel impactful. Transitions are inevitable, but how they're handled is what people will remember. So when we changed line managers, we didn't just shuffle people around. We did specific handover meetings with a one-on-one format. So with the direct report, the old manager, and the new manager. We made it really a special moment to kind of celebrate and come together. When we ran team away days or hackathons, we gave them a theme, a symbol, something that made them feel special. When we launched a big new project, we made sure there was a moment that made people feel that shift. And moments like these matter because they mark change. People don't remember experiences evenly. They remember peaks and transitions and ends. And without these, even the most important milestones can kind of blur into the background. So big changes feel different when they're marked with intention. And some of the strongest team bonds aren't built in meetings or projects, but in the moments that make people laugh, cheer, or just feel like they're part of the team. Those moments that people talk about long after they happen. So at one startup I worked at, we joked about launching the site with a big red button. And when the day came to actually launch the site, someone drew one on a piece of paper with what looked like just a Sharpie and overlaid it on the laptop, and pressing it actually launched the site. It became an inside reference. We had a photo of that we ended up using in various team meetings. But it became a symbol of everything that we were building together. A year later, we took this image of us in the shape of the company logo. Then during the pandemic, when we were in lockdown during Christmas, a few of us put a Christmas band together called Minimum Viable Products, and we had a performance together for the entire company's Christmas party. And that same company had Easter eggs in the code base, commit messages written in rhyme, rap battles during stand-ups. It's those extra moments of fun and things that I'll always remember. So in the Power of Moments, the authors call this breaking the script. Doing something unexpected that disrupts routine and sticks in people's minds. Most workdays blend together, but those moments that stand out, those are the ones that people will talk about for years. So what's something that you could do this week that your team will still be talking about next year. So ask yourself, what are the moments that stand out when you think about the team? And what's one thing that you could do to add just a little bit of magic? So those are our 5 keys and lessons: safety, courtesy, inclusion, efficiency, and show. And I'll end with this quote from Walt Disney. Do what you do so well that they will want to see it again and bring their friends. Because that's at the heart of everything that Disney does. They don't just build theme parks, they create memorable experiences. So think about the work that you do, the teams that you work with, the people that you talk to every day. What would it look like to create something so good that people don't just appreciate it in the moment, but that they want to share it, to pass it on, and bring others into it? Because all of you are part of creating an experience. You have the power to make it something people talk about, something that stays with them long after that moment has passed. And you don't need fireworks or castles or princesses to do it. You don't have to wait to start. So go out there. Do what you do so well that they will want to see it again and bring their friends. And just make a little magic along the way. So if you want to find out more about what I do, check out my website or follow me on LinkedIn through the QR code there. Thank you all for listening.